Well, hello everyone. This is Bob Petrie again with part 3 of The True Messiah. Who is he? This evening, since I'm doing this late in the evening, we're going to be answering the question, what does John mean when he writes the Word in John 1:1? Well, let's get right into it and not waste too much time. What was the source of John's teaching and evangel when he was writing John 1:1, John 1:2, and the rest of his evangel? In order to understand John's evangel, we need to know his source. Without that information, we can't understand his simple message. So what is that simple answer? It's this. Beginning then with Moses, that's number 1, that is the law, and going through all the prophets, number 2, he explained to them everything in the sacred writings, number 3, which referred to himself. You might want to read the book of Luke, chapter 24, verse 27, and the preceding and other verses. But if any of you have ever studied the Hebrew Scriptures and looked at them other than the King James Version, you know they're divided into 3 parts: Moses, the prophets, and the writings. Now, let's take a further look, and we'll see another source that John used when he was writing his evangel to prove who the Messiah was. Quote, Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses wrote in the law and also the prophets." So when John was writing in not only his whole evangel, but in particular John 1:1 and 1:2, etc., he wasn't writing off the top of his head about something that was woo-woo kind of pseudo-spiritual stuff. He was quoting right out of the book of the law of ancient Israel, because that was where the proof was, and he was quoting the law to the Supreme Court of Israel, just as you would in the Supreme Court of America today if you were to go to the Supreme Court on a legal case. Now let's look at what it says here in English a minute. And it says, in the beginning was the Word. Now how did John know what the Word was? In Genesis was a word. Now that word meant something that represented the Messiah that John actually saw with his own eyes. So what was that word? And again we see here, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with, and the Word was. And whatever that word was, it was in the beginning with, as you can see right there. So let's go on to the next statement, and we'll see something very interesting here. In the Greek it says en arche ein halagos, and halagos ein prostantheon, etc., and that word was in beginning, in arche, the word, logos. Now what was that word? John gives us the clue in his other book. You remember the Apostle John wrote more books than just the Evangel. He wrote the Apostle John's Evangel, or Gospel as the world calls it. He wrote 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and he wrote Apocalypsis, or what we call today Revelation. Revelation of Yahshua Messiah, and it was given to John to give to the world. Now down here it says, Ego eimi, I am the Alpha and Omega. And then again, if we go and look, and that's in Revelation chapter 1, and if we go to Revelation 22 and take a look at it, we see in verse 13, he says, Ego eimi, same expression, I am the Alpha and the Omega. The beginning and end. The beginning and end of what? The first and the last. Well, it has greater symbology than just the one that I'm going to tell you about, but it means the first and the last letter of the alphabet. Now, if you were going to look at that in Hebrew, what would be the first and last letter in Hebrew? It would be the Aleph and Tau. Now, I'm writing it in English letters here because some of you I know don't understand and know the Hebrew, but by the time we finish, you will know. And you would pronounce this eighth. But the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet represents the first and last letter of the Greek alphabet. So John is telling us which word to look at it. So let's look at something else here real quickly. And that is this. In Genesis was the Word. Now, what word in the book of Genesis equals the Messiah? And that word, or the Word, was proston. And this word here, just to keep it simple for the moment, is the Elohim. And so what word in Genesis, in the beginning, or in Bereshith, in Genesis, what word in that book in Hebrew was with, or as pros means toward or beside possibly, Elohim? And then it says Elohim was the Word. And what was that word? The Alpha and Omega, which equals the Aleph Tau in Hebrew, which was in beginning with the Elohim. Well, that's it for now, friends, and we will show you clearly in the next part, part 4, which should be really subpart B of part 3, but we'll call it part 4. We'll show you in the Hebrew what this exact word looks like, and it truly is, when you look at it, right with or beside Elohim. So we'll see you next time. Stay tuned for part